April 9th, 1940. The fog-shrouded deck of the German cargo ship MS Rhine, slicing through the icy North Atlantic swells off the coast of Norway. You can almost taste the salt spray whipping across your face as the wind howls through the rigging, carrying the sharp tang of diesel and wet wool. The ship pitches violently, her hull groaning under the assault of 30-foot waves that crash over the bow like vengeful giants. Below decks, in the dim, flickering light of a single bulb, swinging from a wire, Obergefreiter Hans Müller hunches over a cluttered desk in the radio room. His fingers, numb from the cold seeping through the steel bulkheads, fumble with a stack of sealed envelopes. At 22, Müller is just a clerk, one of the faceless cogs in the Kriegsmarine's vast machine, tasked with the mundane duty of handling classified dispatches. The air is thick with the smell of stale coffee and cigarette smoke, the only comforts in this floating tin can that's been dodging Allied patrols for weeks. Müller's uniform hangs loose on his frame, his eyes bloodshot from endless nights, decoding fragments of Enigma traffic. Tonight's orders are routine: bundle the latest code supplements, those precious sheets of paper outlining the daily settings for the U-boat cipher machine, and ship them via neutral courier to Berlin for redistribution. But the fog has delayed the rendezvous with the escort vessel, and the captain's impatient bark echoes from the bridge. "Müller, get those packets moving before we hit the Skagerrak minefields." Hans wipes sweat from his brow, though the chill bites deeper than any fever. He seals the final envelope with wax, stamping it with the eagle insignia that gleams dully in the lamplight. Inside, the codebook isn't just ink on paper. It's the unbreakable shield of the Reich's wolf packs, the mathematical fortress guarding Admiral Dönitz's submarine fleet as they prowl for Allied convoys. One slip, and the entire Atlantic lifeline could unravel. But Hans doesn't dwell on that. He's no cryptographer, just a boy from Hamburg who enlisted to escape the shipyards. He grabs his coat, the heavy wool scratching against his skin, and stumbles up the companionway ladder, the metal rungs slick with condensation. On deck, the world is a grey void. Visibility is down to 50 yards, the Rhine searchlight cutting futile swaths through the mist. Seamen in oilskins huddle by the rail, their breaths fogging the air like ghosts. Müller clutches the satchel to his chest, feeling the weight of secrets that could sink empires. The signalman waves him toward the waiting launch, bobbing alongside, a small motorboat from a nearby E-boat flotilla, meant to ferry the documents safely to shore. "Schnell!" The coxswain shouts over the roar of the engine, his face a mask of salt-crusted whiskers. Hans hands over the satchel, watching as it's stowed in a watertight case. The boat pulls away, its wake slapping against the Rhine's hull like a warning. He turns back inside, rubbing his hands for warmth, unaware that in the chaos of the fog, the coxswain's vessel has veered off course, not toward the German-held fjords, but straight into the path of a lurking British destroyer. Aboard HMS Griffin, 10 miles distant, Lieutenant Commander John Jack Forster peers through his binoculars from the bridge. The night is alive with the hum of the ASDIC pings echoing off the sonar dome, the ship's grey paint blending seamlessly with the sea. Forster, a wiry man in his 30s with a perpetual squint from years at sea, sips bitter tea from a tin mug, the steam curling up to mix with the damp chill. His crew moves with quiet efficiency, ratings in duffel coats manning the 4.7-inch guns, their barrels trained on the mist, while the wireless shack crackles with intercepted chatter, garbled German bursts that hint at something valuable adrift. "Sir, contact bearing 320, range 2,000 yards, the ASDIC operator reports, his voice steady but laced with excitement. Forster nods, the bridge vibrating under his feet as the engines thrum to life. The Griffin surges forward, cutting the waves with a bone-jarring precision. No alarms yet. This could be a straggler from the Narvik invasion fleet, ripe for boarding. "Prepare boarding party," Forster orders, his breath visible in the cold air. "And signal the Walker to flank us." The fog parts just enough to reveal the silhouette of the E-boat, its low profile deceptive in the haze. A challenge flare arcs upward from the Griffin, bathing the sea in an orange glow that dances on the water like liquid fire. The German boat hesitates, then guns its engine in a desperate bid to flee, but the Griffin is faster, her screws churning the depths as she closes the gap. A warning shot booms from the forward turret, the recoil shuddering through the deck plating, the shell exploding in a geyser astern of the target. "Cease fire! They're signaling surrender!" the signalman calls, reading the frantic Aldis lamp flashes. Forster allows a grim smile. In war, prizes like this are gold, fuel, charts, perhaps even prisoners with loose tongues. Grappling hooks fly across the narrowing divide, clanging against the E-boat's rail. British sailors swarm aboard, their boots thudding on wet teak, rifles at the ready. Shouts in German mix with English commands. "Hände hoch, hands up!" In the cabin, the German coxswain, pale and trembling, points mutely to the satchel. A Royal Navy able seaman, Petty Officer Tom Riley, pries it open with a knife, his calloused hands careful amid the tension. Pages spill out, dense columns of letters, numbers and keys that mean nothing to him but scream intelligence to anyone with half a brain. Riley's eyes widen. He knows the drill. "Sir, we've got code material here. Looks like the real deal." Forster arrives moments later, the deck slick under his polished boots. He examines the documents under a shielded torch, the beam casting long shadows across his angular face. The codebook's cover bears the stark warning, "Geheim, nur für U-Boot-Kommandanten," ultra-secret, for submarine eyes only. In that instant, as the Griffin tows her prize southward toward Scapa Flow, Forster senses the shift. A thread pulled from the Nazi tapestry that could unravel their undersea supremacy. The fog closes in again, swallowing the scene, but the documents burn in his mind like a beacon. Back on the Rhine, Müller waits in vain for confirmation of delivery. Dawn breaks grey and unforgiving, the radio silent. Unbeknownst to him, his careless handoff has just handed the Allies the keys to the Enigma Kingdom. In the weeks to come, as U-boats begin to vanish from the convoy lanes like ghosts into the deep, the whisper of betrayal will echo through the Kriegsmarine High Command. But for now, in the Atlantic's cold embrace, the war's invisible hand has tilted ever so slightly toward the light. May 15th, 1940. The low-slung buildings of Bletchley Park, Buckinghamshire, England, shrouded in the fresh green haze of spring. You can hear the distant hum of requisitioned vans rumbling along the gravel drive, their tires crunching like brittle bones under the weight of wartime haste. The air carries the earthy scent of damp soil from recent rains, mingled with the faint, acrid whiff of coal smoke from the estate's chimneys. Inside Hut 8, a wooden prefab that creaks under the slightest breeze, the atmosphere is thicker, stale with the sweat of concentrated mines and the ozone tang of overworked electrical equipment. Gordon Welchman, the hut's chief, paces the narrow aisle between rows of desks cluttered with graph paper, slide rules, and half-empty teacups. At 38, he's a lanky figure in a rumpled tweed suit, his wire-rimmed glasses perpetually slipping down his nose as he rubs his chin, lost in thought. The walls are papered with pinned-up cribs, guessed plaintexts scribbled in frantic pencil, and the constant tick of typewriters punctuates the murmurs of his team. "Gentlemen and ladies," he adds with a nod to the few women scattered among the analysts, "this isn't just another weather report intercept. It's the real thing." The package from Scapa Flow arrived under armed guard that morning, smuggled in a locked briefcase that clanked against the oak table as it was set down. Lieutenant Commander Forster himself had escorted it south, his face etched with the grim satisfaction of a man who's just netted a marlin. Now, in the dim light filtering through blackout curtains, Welchman snaps open the clasps, revealing the codebook's weathered pages. The paper feels crisp under his fingers, almost mocking in its ordinariness. Columns of letters and numbers marching in rigid grids, annotated with German precision. But to Welchman, it's a Rosetta Stone. a crack in the Enigma's armored facade. "Look here," he says, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush as he spreads the sheets flat. Joan Clerk, a sharp-eyed mathematician in her early 20s with auburn hair pinned back severely, leans in closer. Her skirt brushes the desk leg, and she adjusts her glasses, the lenses catching the glow of a nearby desk lamp. The room falls silent, save for the scratch of her pencil as she traces a key setting. These are the daily rotor wirings. If we align them with our captured machine from last year's U-33 prize. Across the hut, Alan Turing hunches over his own workstation, his pipe clenched between his teeth, sending wisps of aromatic tobacco smoke curling toward the rafters. Turing, the brilliant but eccentric Don from Cambridge, doesn't look up immediately. His fingers dance across a prototype bomb, a hulking electromechanical beast of wires and drums that whirs faintly like a trapped hornet. "It's not just the settings," he mutters, his voice muffled. "The indicators. See how they reuse the same Grundstellung. A weakness if we can bomb it out." The team dives in, the air buzzing with urgency. Typewriters clack furiously as cribs are fed into the machines. Assumed phrases like Wetterbericht or Heeresgruppe Nord slotted against ciphertext to test for hits. You feel the tension coiling like a spring. Every wrong guess means hours wasted, every breakthrough a step closer to reading the U-boat's minds. Clark's brow furrows as she cross-references a page, her eraser leaving faint smudges on the codebook's margins. "Sir, this matches the traffic from April 10th. The Wolfpack signals off Norway. They were rerouting based on this exact key." Welchman nods, his eyes alight. Outside, a light drizzle patters against the hut's roof, drumming a rhythmic counterpoint to the inner frenzy. The codebook isn't a full Enigma Bible. It's a supplement, a vital patch to the cipher's evolving skin. But combined with earlier captures, like the rotor from U-33 and the naval grid from a ditched Heinkel, it arms their arsenal. Turing's bomb spins up, its rotors clicking through permutations at a dizzying pace, the heat from its valves warming the air like a small furnace. By evening, as the sun dips low and casts long shadows across the park's manicured lawns, the first decipherment cracks through, a signal from U-47, Prien's boat, the one that sank the Royal Oak. Convoy HX-49 sighted, proceeding to attack. Plain text, clear as day. Welchman slaps the desk, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "We've got them." Not all, but enough to start threading the needle. Word spreads upward through the chain, couriered by motorcycle dispatch riders in leather coats, their engines roaring off into the twilight. At Admiralty House in London, fog clings to the Thames like a shroud, and Rear Admiral John Godfrey sips brandy in his wood-panelled office. The clock ticks past midnight, its hands glowing faintly under the shaded lamp. Godfrey, a stern man with a sailor's squint and a moustache like a steel brush, unfolds the flimsy decrypt. His deputy, Ian Fleming, yes, that Fleming, tall and debonair even in uniform, peers over his shoulder, the scent of his aftershave cutting through the room's musty air. "This changes everything," Godfrey rumbles, his pipe smoke mingling with the damp chill seeping from the river. "Donitz's packs are blind without this. We route SC7 around them, and suddenly their happy times turn to ghosts." Fleming nods, his mind already spinning yarns of espionage, though he keeps it to himself. The decrypts will flow to the convoy commanders now, coded as Ultra for the eyes of the trusted few, a bland word masking a weapon sharper than any torpedo. Back at Bletchley, the hut quiets as exhaustion claims the team. Turing stretches, his joints popping, and steps outside for air. The night is crisp, stars pricking through the overcast sky like distant signals. He lights another pipe, the match flaring briefly, illuminating his thoughtful face. The codebook sits locked away now, but its ghost haunts every intercept. In the weeks ahead, as Allied shipping losses plummet and U-boats report empty seas, the Kriegsmarine will scramble. Intercepted orders will demand purges, new keys, witch hunts for spies that find nothing but shadows. But here, in the quiet heart of England, the tide begins its inexorable turn. Muller's mistake, Forster's prize, the cryptanalysts' grind, it's all converging, a silent symphony unraveling the wolf packs from within. The Atlantic, vast and unforgiving, waits for the next move, its depths whispering of sinkings yet to come. September 17th, 1940. The heaving decks of convoy SC4, churning through the black ink of the North Atlantic, 600 miles west of Ireland. You grip the salt-crusted rail of the escort destroyer HMS Sardonyx, the wind tearing at your duffel coat like 1,000 invisible claws, carrying the metallic bite of spray and the distant rumble of thunderheads massaging the horizon. The sea is a restless beast tonight, swells rising like the backs of buried leviathans, slamming into the hull with a force that vibrates up through your boots and into your bones. Around you, the convoy stretches in ragged formation, 43 merchant ships, their silhouettes hunched against the gale, loaded with timber from Canada, grain from the prairies, and the sinews of Britain's beleaguered empire. Captain Edward "Ted" Baxter stands on the bridge, his oilskin cape flapping like a battle flag, binoculars pressed to his eyes as he scans the murk. At 45, Baxter is a veteran of Jutland, his face weathered into deep lines by years of staring down squalls and submarines alike. The bridge is a cocoon of controlled chaos, the helmsman wrestling the wheel, spokes slick under his gloves, the ASDIC operator hunched over his set, the green glow of the screen painting his face in ethereal light, and the signalman tapping out Morse to the other escorts, HMS Heartland and the Free French corvette Aconit, flanking the herd like sheepdogs in the storm. Below, in the dim red glow of the chart room, Lieutenant Peter Hargreaves pores over a crumpled Admiralty signal, the paper crinkling under his fingers like dry leaves. The air down here is warmer, heavy with the scent of damp charts, machine oil, and the faint, sour tang of unwashed bodies crammed into every corner. Hargreaves, a lanky Oxford grad turned naval officer, adjusts his cap, the brass fittings cold against his temple. The message is terse, stamped "Most Secret Ultra." Reroute to 52 degrees north, 28 west, avoid the reported Wolfpack shadow. No explanation, just coordinates etched in pencil, a lifeline from the invisible spy masters in England's green heart. "Captain," Hargreaves calls up the voice tube, his voice steady despite the pitch. "Bletchley confirms the pack's dissolved. U-65 and friends chasing ghosts south of us. We swing wide and we're clear." Druge Baxter grunts from above, the tube whistling with his reply, "Make it so, and pray the weather holds our hand." The Sardonyx heels over as the rudder bites, engines thrumming deeper, propellers churning foam that glows phosphorescent in the dark. The convoy follows, a lumbering serpent twisting through the waves, freighter's screws laboring against the drag. You feel the shift in your gut, the subtle realignment that turns peril into passage. No one speaks of how they know. The ultra-veil is ironclad, shared only with men like Baxter, who've sworn oaths deeper than the ocean. Far to the east, in the steel bowels of U-48, Captain Lieutenant Heinrich Love prowls the control room, the deck plates slick with condensation that drips like sweat from the overhead pipes. The sub is a pressure cooker at 200 meters, the hull creaking under the Atlantic's immense fist, every rivet a potential betrayer. Love, a stocky Berliner with a dueling scar whitening his cheek, grips the periscope handles when they surface for a fix, but now it's all dead reckoning and frustration. The air reeks of diesel fumes, unwashed crew, and the chlorine bite from the air purifiers wheezing against the CO2 buildup. His watch officer, Lieutenant Karl Voss, hunches over the hydrophone, headphones clamped tight, ears straining for the propeller song of prey. "Nothing, Herr Kalou," Voss reports, his voice muffled, eyes red-rimmed from the strain. "The convoy was here yesterday, HX-72, fat with tankers. Now, silence, as if the sea swallowed them whole." Love curses under his breath, slamming a fist on the chart table, the dividers scattering like fleeing rats. The enigma whirs in its corner, the cryptographer feeding in the day's keys. Those same supplements Muller bundled months ago, now echoing hollow since the spring purges. Dönitz's orders crackle over the speaker. Press the attack. Merchant tonnage is the Reich's lifeblood. But the wolf pack is fraying. U-48 adrift, her sisters U-38 and U-100 reporting empty sectors, fuel running low as they burn diesel chasing phantoms. Love lights a cigarette, the match flare illuminating his scowl, smoke curling toward the vents. Surface at dusk. Radio BDU for new bearings. Something's rotten. Spies. Or the English devils reading our mail. We're back with the convoy. Dawn breaks in smears of grey, the storm easing to a sullen chop. The Sardonyx leads the van, her 4-inch gun crew stamping feet against the chill, barrels sweeping the horizon. Baxter sips tea from a chipped mug, the steam vanishing into the wind, as a Sunderland flying boat drones overhead, its shadow skimming the waves like a guardian albatross. No contacts on Asdic, no plumes of periscope wakes, just the steady beat of safe passage. By noon, the signal comes. Convoy intact. Proceed to Liverpool. Cheers ripple through the decks, muffled by the wind. But Hargreaves knows the cost. The nights at Bletchley. The codebreakers' grind that turned certain doom into this fragile victory. In Berlin's Tirpitzufer headquarters, the Chancellery's shadow looming nearby, Admiral Karl Dönitz paces his office, the carpet muffling his boots like a grave. It's October now, the leaves outside turning to blood red, but inside the air is stale with cigar ash and mounting dread. Maps sprawl across the table, pins marking sinkings, or rather, the lack thereof. At 50, Dönitz is a coiled spring, his uniform impeccable, eyes sharp as U-boat scopes. His chief of staff, Kapitän Zur See Eberhard Gott, stands by the window, the Rhine's distant murmur filtering through the glass. 20 ships this month, Dönitz snaps, jabbing a finger at the chart. We should have tripled that. The packs return empty, U-47 lost, Prien with her, and now SC-4 slips our net like smoke. Gott nods, his face gaunt, the weight of unexplained failures pressing like depth charges. Intercepts from weather stations in Greenland hint at leaks, but the enigma is unbreakable, the cryptographers swear. Dönitz halts, staring at a telex from U-48. Convoy vanished. Suspect enemy foreknowledge. He crushes the paper, the fibers tearing under his grip. Double the key changes. Hunt the traitors. If the English are guessing, we'll blind them. Yet the guesses are no longer blind. At Bletchley, the Codebook's legacy pulses through the bombs, Turing's machines now churning variants faster than human minds. Joan Clerk, sleeves rolled up, her fingers ink-stained, feeds a fresh crib into the whirring drums. The phrase Wetter Vorhersage, aligning with a U-99 signal. The lights click. Hit. They're planning a patrol line off Iceland, she announces, voice cutting the hut's hum. Welchman relays it westward, the motorcycle courier's engine fading into the night. November brings the hammer. Off the Grand Banks, convoy HX-84 steams under Ultra's wing, escorts vectored precisely. HMS Broadway spots U-123 first, her conning tower breaking surface like a shark's fin. Depth charges plunge, bubbling froth, the explosions blooming underwater in muffled thunder. You hear the screams over the hydrophones, crew voices in panic as the U-boat spirals down, her hull crumpling at 300 meters. Commander Donald McIntyre of the Broadway wipes spray from his brow, the deck shuddering from the blasts. One less wolf, he mutters, as the convoy presses on unscathed. Dönitz's reports pile up, losses mounting, tonnage saved for the Allies climbing. In U-boat pens at Lorient, concrete bunkers echoing with hammers and curses, commanders whisper of curses. Love, surviving another fruitless patrol, docks with half his fuel, his log damning the invisible enemy. The Codebook's ghost haunts them all. Müller's fog-shrouded error rippling outward. sinking packs one by one. The Atlantic battle tightens, the Allies' secret edge sharpening as winter storms brew larger battles yet. March 22nd, 1941. The cramped conning tower of U-99, submerged at periscope depth in the roiling grey expanse of the Denmark Strait, 400 miles south of Iceland. You can feel the sub's hull flexing under the pressure of the frigid depths, a low groan echoing through the steel like the breath of some ancient sea monster. The air inside is foul, thick with the acrid reek of sweat-soaked wool, lubricating oil, and the metallic tang of battery acid that's starting to seep from the overtaxed cells. Rivulets of condensation trickle down the bulkheads, pooling at your feet in the dim red glow of the battle lanterns, while the hydrophone operator's headphones crackle with the distant thrum of screws, propellers churning far above, teasing like prey just out of reach. Captain Lieutenant Otto Kretschmer, the U-boat ace known as Silent Otto, peers through the attack scope, his eyes narrowed to slits behind the rubber eyepieces. At 30, he's a picture of predatory calm, his fair hair cropped close under his cap, a neatly trimmed beard framing a face etched with the scars of a dozen patrols. His gloved hands steady the scope's handles, turning it slowly as the periscope's head slices the surface like a knife through oil. Bearing 045, range 8,000 meters, he murmurs, his voice a controlled whisper that cuts the tension like a blade. Freighter, armed but slow. Convoy SC-26, 5 columns, escorts scattered. We've got them. Below, in the attack center, the plotters scribble furiously on the chart, pencils scratching against damp paper as they triangulate from the night's intercepts. The Enigma machine squats in its nook, its rotors clicking softly under the cryptographer's fingers, decoding Donitz's latest orders. Engage at will. Tonnage über alles. But Kretschmer's brow furrows slightly. The signals have been off since winter, packs vectored to empty patches, convoys vanishing like mist. He dismisses it as weather, the eternal foe, and snaps the order, Tube 1 and 2 set for 400 meters, fire on my mark. The torpedoes launch with a muffled thud, bubbles racing upward as the fish streak through the black water. You brace against the deck's shudder. The sound of impacts distant but thunderous. 2 hits, the freighter's hull rupturing in plumes of fire and steam that light the night like a false dawn. Cheers ripple through the control room, muffled by the vents, but Kretschmer doesn't join them. Dive to 150. Evade. The boat plunges, ballast tanks flooding with a rush that presses you down, the sea's weight clawing at the outer hull. Hours later, as U-99 slips away under cover of a squall, the convoy's escorts, HMS Castleton and the sloop HMS Black Swan, hunt blindly, their Azdic pings bouncing off thermoclines and false echoes. Aboard the Castleton, Commander Frederick "Freddy" Lane grips the sonar repeater, the screen's green blips flickering like ghosts in the bridge's humid dimness. The destroyer pitches through 15-foot seas, spray sheeting across the forward gun turret, the wind howling through the open flying bridge like a banshee. Lane, a stocky Yorkshireman with a pipe perpetually clenched in his teeth, squints at the plot. The air tastes of salt and cordite, the deck vibrating from the screw's relentless drive. "Ultra update, sir," the signals officer reports, unfolding a flimsy from the cipher tube, his fingers ink-stained from the decoder. "Bletchley pins the main pack. U-99, U-100, and 4 more, pinned east of us. Swing the screen 20 degrees port. They'll break contact by dawn." No source named, just the coordinates burned into the paper like divine writ. Lane nods, blowing a stream of tobacco smoke that stings your eyes. "Helm, come left to 280. Signal the Swan to cover the stragglers." The Castleton responds, her boilers roaring as she carves a new path through the waves, the convoy's merchantmen lumbering behind like obedient elephants. By morning, the wolf pack fractures. Kretschmer surfaces for air, the conning tower hatch clanging open to a blast of icy wind that whips spray across his face, carrying the sharp ozone of an approaching front. Seamen scramble topside, their oilskins flapping as they man the gun. But the sea is empty. HX-117 rerouted overnight, fat with Canadian wheat and steel, now steaming safely west under the escort's wing. Verdammt, Kretschmer mutters, scanning the horizon with binoculars that fog in the chill. Radio silence holds, but doubt gnaws. The English seem to dance just ahead, always one step removed. In the shadowed war room of Admiralty House, London, April 1941 brings a fragile spring thaw. Sunlight slanting through grimy windows onto maps alive with coloured pins. Rear Admiral John Godfrey leans over the plotting table, his fingers tracing red lines of sunk U-boats, 20 since New Year's, their positions decrypted from Enigma traffic that flows like water now, thanks to that Norwegian fog's gift. The room smells of polished oak, fresh ink, and the faint floral hint of secretary's perfume cutting through the men's club haze. Godfrey's moustache twitches as he confers with his intelligence chief, Commander Norman Denning, a bespectacled figure whose calm belies the storm he's unleashing. SC-26 held with minimal losses, Denning says, tapping a telex. Ultra vectored them clear of Kretschmer's lot. But Dönitz is adapting, more radio discipline, shorter signals. Godfrey straightens, the chair creaking under him. Keep the bombs spinning. Turing's tweaks have us ahead, but one slip. Outside, Big Ben chimes the hour, a sombre toll amid the blackout scars on the city. Farther south at Bletchley Park, the huts pulse with feverish activity under a canopy of budding oaks. Alan Turing, sleeves rolled to his elbows, his shirt damp with sweat despite the cool air, adjusts a bomb's wiring, the machine's drums whirring like a chorus of mechanical bees. The scent of hot solder and cooling fans fills the space, mingling with the ever-present tea stains on the desks. Joan Clerk, her hair escaping its pins in the humidity, cross-checks a fresh decrypt against the codebook's faded pages. Those Müller originals, now dog-eared relics guarded like holy writ. U-5552's orders for May, she announces, voice steady. Patrol line off Newfoundland. We can ambush them with escorts from SC-125. Welchman nods from his perch, pipe smoke wreathing his head like a crown. The team works in shifts now, exhaustion etched in shadows under eyes, but the hits keep coming. A signal from U-110 crackles through, coordinates for a convoy that never materializes, rerouted by Ultra's hand. Turing pauses, wiping his brow. They're feeling it. The keys change faster, but we're inside the loop. May 9th, 1941. The North Atlantic erupts in fury off the coast of Iceland. Convoy OB-318, a tempting prize of 22 ships, their holds brimming with munitions and fuel oil bound for the Mediterranean. You stand on the bridge of HMS Bulldog, the wind lashing rain across your face like needles, the destroyer's deck awash in foam as she charges through Force 8 gales. Commander Joe Baker Creswell, a tall patrician with a voice like gravel, bellows orders over the gale, his greatcoat streaming water. The Aztec dome hums below, pinging relentlessly. Ultra's whisper arrives via WT. U-110 surfaced, damaged, bearing 060. Baker Creswell's eyes gleam. Full ahead, depth charges set shallow. The Bulldog surges, her screws foaming white, closing on the wounded Wolf. Aboard U-110, Captain Lieutenant Fritz Julius Lemp clings to the bridge rail as the sub wallows, her diesels coughing from torpedo backlash. Waves crash over him, the cold shock stealing breath. His crew shouting as they flood compartments to dive, but it's too late. The Bulldog's charges straddle, explosions blooming like underwater suns, buckling the pressure hull. U-110 broaches, listing hard, her crew spilling into the sea amid rafts and debris. Lemp, swept overboard, thrashes in the icy grip, life jacket biting into his shoulders. British whalers pull alongside, grapnels securing the prize before she sinks. Petty Officer R.E. Dick Leggett boards first, boots slipping on the tilting deck, the sub's innards groaning. In the radio room he finds it. Another Enigma machine, rotors intact, manuals scattered like confetti. "Jackpot," he radios, voice crackling over the static. The tow back to Iceland is harrowing, storms battering the hulk, but Bulldog delivers. At Bletchley, the new capture fuses with the old codebook, bombs accelerating, decrypts pouring forth. Kretschmer's U-99 meets her end in November, depth-charged off Gibraltar, but the Vanishing accelerates, dozens of packs scattered, sinkings mounting. Dönitz, in his Kerriman bunker at Lorient. Concrete walls echoing with rage, pause over lost ledgers, the air heavy with brine and despair. "The Enigma fails us," he growls to Gott, maps curling at the edges. Purges follow, keys quadruple encrypted, but the leak persists, invisible and inexorable. By summer's end, Allied shipping surges, the Battle of the Atlantic tilting. Miller's fog-bound blunder, amplified through code and cunning, dooms the wolves one patrol at a time, their shadows fading into the deep. January 15th, 1942. The frozen wastes of the Labrador Sea, 500 miles east of Newfoundland, where the North Atlantic gnaws at the edges of the continent like a starving beast. You huddle on the iced-over deck of Convoy on 54, the wind howling through the rigging of the SS Empire Star, carrying shards of sleet that sting like hornets against exposed skin. The ship rolls in the troughs of 20-foot swells, her riveted hull creaking in protest, the air thick with the brine of spray and the oily reek of fuel oil seeping from strained bunkers. Merchantmen dot the horizon in a loose diamond formation, 30 vessels heavy with bauxite ore from Guyana and frozen meat from Argentina, their wakes merging into a frothy scar across the leaden waves. Escorts prowl the perimeter, the destroyer HMS Malcolm ahead, her pennant fluttering raggedly, and the corvette HMS Loosestrife to starboard, her Azdic pinging into the depths like a heartbeat in the storm. Commander Richard Dick Onslow stands on the Malcolm's bridge, his greatcoat crusted with rime, binoculars fogging as he sweeps the murk. At 35, Onslow's face is gaunt from months at sea, his eyes shadowed by the perpetual dusk of winter patrols. The bridge vibrates underfoot from the engine's thrum, the wheelhouse alive with the snap of signal flags and the crackle of the RDF set detecting faint German echoes. Below, in the dimly lit operations room, Lieutenant James Jimmy Ellis unfolds the latest ultra-dispatch. The paper brittle in the chill, stamped with the innocuous Boniface cover for the eyes of the initiated. The air down here tastes of damp wool and hot solar from the wireless gear. The chart table littered with dividers and grease pencils. "Pack forming, sir. U-754, U-575, and 6 more, vectoring from the Azores," Ellis reads, his voice low over the gale's muffled roar outside. Bletchley plots them at grid AJ27, closing fast. Recommend hard turn to 090 at Euro 200. Onslow nods from the voice pipe, the tube whistling with his reply. "Helm steady as she goes till then." "Loosestrife, screen the flanks." The Malcolm surges forward, her screws biting deeper, cutting a white V through the chaos as the convoy braces for the invisible noose tightening around it. Deep below, in the steel sarcophagus of U-754, Captain Lieutenant Hans Friedrich Romer grips the periscope standards, the sub wallowing at 100 meters under a ceiling of growlers, free-floating ice chunks that play havoc with the hydrophones. The control room reeks of chlorine gas from the purifiers, mingled with the sour sweat of 40 men crammed into unventilated hell, their breaths fogging the gauges. Romer, a wiry veteran from Kiel with a perpetual squint from torpedo sights, adjusts his headset, the Enigma's telex chattering softly in the corner, keys change thrice weekly now per Dönitz's frantic edicts, but still whispering orders that lead to empty seas. "Hydrophone contact screws, bearing 310 range 10,000, the operator reports, his voice tense, fingers white-knuckled on the dials. "Convoy noise, heavy merchants, escorts light." "Shadow them," Romer orders, his gloved hand sketching a quick plot on the damp chart, the pencil lead snapping under pressure. "Signal the pack, form line abreast, attack at dawn." The boat creeps forward on electric motors, silent as a dagger, but doubt flickers in Romer's eyes. The English convoys slip away too often, as if the ocean itself betrays them. His executive officer, Lieutenant Zurzee Wilhelm Becker, feeds the latest cipher into the enigma, rotors whirring like impatient insects, but the response from BDU is delayed, fragmented by the ice pack's interference. By midnight, the wolf pack coalesces, 8 U-boats fanning out like fingers probing the dark, their diesels muffled under the surface. U-575, Underkorvettenkapitän Günther Clerk, takes the van, her conning tower slicing ice floes that clink against the hull like warning bells. Clerk, broad-shouldered and scarred from an earlier depth-charge rattle, scans the RDF plot, the screen's glow casting his face in blue shadows. The air on his bridge is razor-cold, seamen in layered sweaters stamping feet against the deck's frost. "Convoy steady on 270, he mutters, lighting a cigarette whose flame gutters in the wind. "Our turn." But Ultra's hand intervenes. At 0155, Onslow's signal flares. "Execute turn, escorts wheel right." The Malcolm leads the pivot, her hull shuddering as she comes about, the Lucistrife screws cavitating in the chop. The convoy snakes eastward, merchant skippers cursing the maneuver but obeying the Aldi's lamp's urgent blinks. You feel the shift aboard the Empire Star, the deck tilting sharply, crates groaning in the holds, the steward's call for "all hands secure," echoing down the companionways. Asdic pings from the escorts now hunt shadows, false contacts from the ice, while the wolf pack presses into vacuum. Dawn breaks in a pallid smear, the sea a churn of whitecaps under scudding clouds. Roma surfaces U-754 for a fix, the hatch grinding open to a blast of Arctic air that numbs exposed flesh. Seamen swarm the Wintergarten, manning the 80-kilometer gun, but the horizon mocks them. Empty, save for a distant Sunderland's drone, its bomb bay doors yawning like a predator's maw. "Convoy gone," the watch officer gasps, binoculars trembling. Radio silence breaks. Frantic bursts to BDU, but Clerk's U-575 spots trouble first. A sloop, HMS Deptford, vectored by Ultra's precision, closing from the mist at 25 knots. Depth charges rain down, the explosions hammering the water like divine fists, geysers erupting around U-575's dive. Clerk dives hard, the boat groaning as she plunges, lights flickering from the shock. "Damage control!" he bellows, water spraying from a ruptured pipe, the crew scrambling with patch kits amid the chaos. The Deptford circles, her hedgehog mortars spitting projectiles that bloom in lethal patterns, one shearing U-575's stern planes. Roma evades south, but U-754 draws fire next. The Malcolm's 4.7-inch shells straddling, one glancing the conning tower in a shower of sparks and screams. By noon, the pack shatters. U-754 limps away, fuel leaking from punctured tanks, while Clerk's boat signals surrender, her crew bobbing in the swells as British whalers close in. Onslow watches from the Malcolm's wing, the wind tearing at his scarf. The sea littered with debris, oil slicks iridescent on the waves, a kapok life jacket drifting like a surrender flag. 3 confirmed kills, Ellis reports below, tallying the ultra-fed ambushes. The rest scattering. Cheers are muted. The cost is lives, but the convoy presses on, its cargo safe for Britain's factories. In Lorient's vast concrete pens, March 1942 echoes with the hammers of repair crews, the air heavy with welders' sparks and the tang of rusting steel. Admiral Dönitz storms the operations room, his boots echoing off the damp floors, maps under his arm curling from humidity. At 50, his frame is taut with fury, eyes burning under the harsh fluorescence as he confronts his staff. Eberhard Gott, ever the steady hand, spreads the latest returns. On 54 intact wolf packs decimated, U-576 sunk off the Carolinas weeks prior, her enigma washed ashore like a taunt. 28 boats lost since 41, Dönitz snarls, slamming a fist on the table, the teacups rattling. The English read us like a child's primer. Change the keys again. Shark to porpoise protocols. No more four-rotor complacency. Gort nods, but his face tightens. The cryptographers in Berlin swear the machine holds, blaming weather or spies. Outside, U-boats nestle in their berths. Crews on shore leave whispering of hexes, morale fraying like old rope. Clerk, survivor of the Labrador maelstrom, debriefs in a smoke-filled bunker, his uniform still salt-stiffened. "They knew our every move," he insists, voice hoarse, as if Churchill himself rode the waves. At Bletchley spring thaws the grounds into mud, but Hut 8 burns hotter. Alan Turing, now bearded and intense, oversees a bomb farm, dozens of machines whirring in chorus, their heat turning the air soupy with the scent of varnish and ozone. Joan Clerk, promoted and tireless, her fingers calloused from relays, aligns a crib against U-588's traffic. Patrol line BD 41. The drums spin, lights flashing. Match. "They're massing for PQ-17, she calls. Welchman relaying it north to the Arctic convoys. The Codebook's lineage, fused with U-110's rotors, anticipates every twist, decrypts flowing like arterial blood. By summer, the toll mounts. Wolf packs vanish in ambushes off Freetown. Convoy HX-229 threading the needle past U-504's grave. Dönitz withdraws boats from the Atlantic's throat, tonnage saved tipping the scales. Millions of tons rerouted, factories humming, invasions brewing. In the Admiralty's map room, Godfrey pores over pins, Fleming at his side sketching notes for tales of shadows. "Ultras bought us a year," Godfrey murmurs, the Thames lapping outside like applause. The Clerk's fog-born gift ripples on, sinking packs into oblivion. The war's end glimpsed on the horizon like a false dawn. May 24th, 1943. The churning maelstrom of the mid-Atlantic Gap, 700 miles west of the Azores, where the ocean heaves like a wounded giant under a sky bruised purple by thunderheads. You cling to the heaving forecastle of the destroyer HMS Starling, the deck slick with oil and spray that lashes your face like frozen whips, carrying the bitter reek of cordite and the metallic tang of blood from a recent scrape. The ship plunges through 30-foot seas, her hull shuddering as waves crash over the bow, foaming white against the grey steel. Convoy ONS-5 trails behind, 42 merchants laden with tanks from Detroit and bauxite from the Indies, their funnels belching smoke that twists into the gale like dying serpents. Escorts form a tight screen. The Starling leads, her sisters HMS Wild Goose and HMS Wren flanking, their Aztec domes pulsing beneath the waterline. Captain Frederick John Walker, Johnny to his crew, stands resolute on the bridge. His duffel coat sodden and heavy, binoculars chained around his neck like a talisman. At 50, Walker's frame is wiry from endless watches, his eyes sharp and unblinking despite the salt crusting his beard. The bridge hums with tension. The helmsman wrestling the wheel, spokes groaning under gloved hands, the plotter marking ultra-fed fixes on the damp chart, pencil strokes frantic, and the depth charge crews below stamping feet against the chill, readying patterns of death. Walker sips scalding cocoa from a tin mug, the steam vanishing into the wind as the latest signal crackles from the WT shack. Wolfpack confirmed, U-468, U-504, 8 total, closing from southwest. Bletchley plots, intercept course 220. "Steady, lads," Walker rasps over the gale, his voice cutting through the roar like a knife. "We've got their measure now." The Starling surges ahead, engines thrumming deep in her belly, propellers cavitating foam that glows faintly in the dim light. You feel the purpose in her bones, the reroutes, the ambushes, all born from that fog-shrouded codebook 3 years gone, its keys unlocking Enigma's vault and turning the hunters into prey. 600 feet below, in the iron coffin of U-504, Kapitänleutnant Hans-Georg Friedrich surfaces for a desperate bearing. The conning tower hatch slamming open to a deluge that soaks the bridge watch. The sub broaches amid the storm, diesels gulping air that tastes of ozone and salt. Her decks awash as seamen in oilskins scramble to clear ice from the gun mounts. Friedrich, a gaunt Prussian with hollow cheeks from months of short rations, grips the rail, his greatcoat flapping like a shroud. The wind howls through the periscope shears, carrying distant propeller thrum, the convoy's song, tantalizing after weeks of barren patrols. RDF contact, escorts bearing 015, range 15,000. The operator shouts from below, his voice muffled by the hatch. Friedrich nods, lighting a soggy cigarette whose ember flares briefly, illuminating his scowl. Enigma orders from Lorient, now quadruple encrypted under Triton protocols, promise a fat kill. ONS-5, unescorted whispers suggest. But doubt festers, packs dissolve before strikes, boats vanish without trace. Form the line, Friedrich bellows down the tube. U-504 takes port flank. Attack submerged at 0400. The boat dives, ballast flooding with a rush that presses you against the bulkheads, the world narrowing to the control room's red gloom. Hydrophones whine, plotting the convoy's zigzags, patterns too prescient, as if the English chart their souls. Crewmen huddle at stations, faces pale under the gauges, the air thick with diesel fumes and the sour edge of fear. Lieutenant zur See, Otto Brandt, feeds the cipher into the enigma, rotors clicking like accusatory fingers, but the response from BDU is a ghost. Intercepted, rerouted, lost in the ether. By 0300, the pack strikes blind. U-468 looses torpedoes first, muffled thuds echoing as fish streak toward the convoy's van. Aboard the SS Fort Lidford, a freighter in the starboard column, the explosion rips her amidships, flames blooming orange against the black, screams piercing the night as her crew abandons ship into rafts that pitch like corks. You hear it over the starling speakers, the hydrophone's wail of impacts, 2 merchants down, but the escorts wheel with predatory grace. Walker's voice booms, starling to screen, hunter-killer pattern, wild goose, hedgehogs on the leader. The destroyers fan out, Azdic pings lancing the depths, pinning U-504's echo like a butterfly to cork. Depth charges cascade, the sea erupting in geysers that tower like avenging spirits, the blasts reverberating through U-504's hull like hammer blows on an anvil. Friedrich braces in the control room, lights flickering as a bulkhead buckles, water jetting from seams. Emergency dive, 250 meters. Alarms shriek, the boat groaning under the pressure, rivets popping like gunfire. But the Starling closes, her squid mortars hurling 60-pound projectiles in a lethal circle, 24 at a time, blooming around the sub in thunderous roars. One strikes true, shearing the pressure hull. Compartments flood in icy torrents, crewmen clawing for the escape tower amid the chaos. Friedrich shouts orders lost in the din, his hands slick on the planes, but U-504 spirals down, her last transmission a garbled plea swallowed by the deep. Dawn fractures the storm, grey light revealing the toll. 3 U-boats sunk, the pack shattered, ONS-5 limping but intact, only 5 ships lost to the initial volley. Walker paces the bridge, the deck still quivering from the charges, seamen cheering hoarsely as debris, timbers a kapok vest, shreds of Enigma printout, floats by. Black May, he muters, tallying the decrypts that vectored them true. In London, the Admiralty's war room buzzes under shaded lamps, maps alive with red crosses, 41 U-boats sent to the bottom that month alone, Ultra's blade carving through Dönitz's fleet like a scythe through wheat. In Lorient's shadowed bunkers, June 1943 brings defeat's stench, rust, weld smoke, and the wail of sirens for departing ghosts. Admiral Dönitz slumps at his desk, the concrete walls closing in, his uniform rumpled for the first time, eyes hollow from sleepless nights. Eberhard Gott spreads the ledgers, 50% losses, packs withdrawn to the Bay of Biscay, the Atlantic Bridge crumbling. Triton broken, Dönitz whispers, crushing a report, the paper tearing like flesh. They read everything. Müller's supplements, the U-110 rotors, all of it. Purges rage in Berlin, cryptographers vanishing into camps, but the enigma bleeds on, bombs at Bletchley anticipating every feint. By autumn, the tide surges. Convoys like HX-263 steam, unmolested, their holds fueling D-Day's forge. At Bletchley, under autumn leaves turning gold, Alan Turing oversees the Colossi, vast code crackers humming like hearts, Joan Clark's team decrypting naval traffic in hours. Welchman relays the final blows. U-552 depth charged off Brest, her Wolfpack a memory. Turing steps outside, pipe in hand, the air crisp with victory's scent, as distant engines rumble toward Normandy. May 1945. The ruins of Reims, France, where spring rain patters on shattered roofs, the air heavy with damp stone and the faint char of bombed-out mills. In a schoolhouse map room, Allied generals cluster around a table scarred by cigarette burns, the scent of newsprint and pipe tobacco thick as the tension lifts. General Dwight Eisenhower signs the surrender, his pen scratching finality, while Dönitz, now Führer in name only, fades into captivity, his U-boat dream drowned in the Atlantic's maw. Ultra's secret holds till 75, but its legacy echoes. 2 years shaved from the war, dozens of packs vanished, millions of tons saved. Muller's fog-bound error, Forster's prize, the codebreaker's grind, it all converged in those black waters, tilting the scales from shadow to light. The ocean, vast and silent now, keeps its graves, whispering of wolves that hunted no more.